Two fake enforcers showed up out of nowhere and towed Nathan Briggs's fully legal '67 Camaro right from his driveway, claiming it violated made-up HOA rules. Behind it all stood Curtis Bell, a smug HOA president, running an off-the-books racket on unsuspecting homeowners. But Nathan wasn't just any neighbor. He was the guy who writes state patrol budgets and knew exactly where to strike. And just wait till you hear how this quiet pencil pusher turned the tables and made justice roar louder than any engine. It was one of those long Tuesdays, you know the type, meetings that could have been emails, lukewarm coffee, and traffic that makes you question every life choice. I pulled into my quiet suburban street, already thinking about dinner and maybe putting a few hours into rewiring the dash on my Camaro. But as I turned into the driveway, I froze. There it was, my '67 Camaro SS, my pride and joy, halfway up the ramp of a flatbed tow truck. And standing by it were two men I didn't recognize. They wore uniforms that looked almost right. Too crisp, too new. Their badges were plastic, and their posture said weekend security, more than law enforcement. One of them was scribbling on a clipboard like it was the most important job on earth. I stepped out of the car slowly, heart pounding. "What do you think you're doing?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. The taller one didn't look up. "Unauthorized vehicle in an HOA zone," he said. "Violation code 47C. It's being impounded." Now, here's the thing. There is an HOA in my neighborhood. It's a thorn in everyone's side, but even they have to follow real procedures. My tags were current. My car was parked on my property. I knew for a fact there was no such thing as a 47C. I asked for documentation, and they handed me a printed slip, complete with the HOA's logo in grainy, low res, and a fine that looked like it was drafted in Microsoft Word. No signature, no official stamp, just a bold line at the bottom that read, "Pay within 48 hours to avoid further action." It was laughable. Almost, but there was nothing funny about watching that tow cable tighten around a car I'd spent 6 years restoring bolt by bolt after my father passed. Nothing funny about the way these guys looked at me like they had all the power. What they didn't know, what made this entire act of arrogance almost surreal, was that I, Nathan Briggs, had been writing budget policy for the state patrol for nearly a decade. I know every line item that funds real officers and what it costs to license a legal impound. And let's just say, these two weren't in the system. I didn't raise my voice, I didn't throw a punch, but something shifted inside me in that moment. A wire snapped, not the angry kind, but the cold, surgical kind, the kind that flips when you realize you're not just protecting a car, you're standing between right and wrong. And I don't back down when I'm right. I stood at the edge of the driveway, unable to move, as the flatbed rolled down the street, with my father's '67 Camaro chained to its back, like a captured animal. Its taillights blinked as it turned the corner, and for a split second, it felt like something permanent was leaving me. Something I couldn't get back. That car wasn't just a vehicle. It wasn't just chrome and paint and horsepower. It was a history book in steel. Every dent told a story. Every screw was a memory of late nights in our garage, just me and my dad, the radio humming low, and the smell of engine oil in the air. After he passed, it became my connection to him, the one thing that made those memories feel close again. And now, some strangers had taken it away like it was trash. I went straight to the HOA office the next morning. I didn't go in angry. I went in with questions, with documents, with everything I needed to prove that what happened wasn't just wrong. It was illegal. But waiting for me was Curtis Bell, the self-appointed president of the HOA, lounging behind a desk like he owned the town. He didn't even stand up when I came in, just looked at me over the rim of his iced tea glass like he'd been expecting a show. "You signed the community agreement, didn't you?" he said, calm as ever. "Policy's policy." I tried to explain. I showed him my car's registration, pointed out that it was parked on private property. I even handed him a copy of state code about vehicle removal. He glanced at the papers, shrugged, and said, "Well, maybe next time you'll read the fine print a little closer." That's when the pain hit me. Not just the loss, but the deeper sting, the kind that comes when someone treats you like you don't matter, like your story, your effort, your memories are just paperwork to them. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't a slip-up. It was a setup. They weren't enforcing rules. They were running a racket, picking off easy targets, folks who didn't have the time or resources to push back. Seniors, new homeowners, people too tired or too busy to fight over what was technically allowed, and they thought I was one of them. That's when the pain turned to something else. Not rage, at least not yet, but a quiet, burning clarity. If they thought I'd just let this go, they had no idea who they were dealing with. The moment I realized this wasn't just petty overreach, but a coordinated scam, something inside me locked into place. I wasn't just a homeowner anymore. I was a systems guy, and they'd stepped into my territory. Most folks don't spend their days combing through procurement ledgers or enforcement codes, but I do. I write the policies that determine how our state allocates funding to law enforcement. I know the fine line between jurisdiction and overreach, and exactly how serious the charge of impersonating state authority really is. So, I stopped wasting time trying to talk sense into people who weren't interested. Instead, I sat down at my desk that night and started building my case like I would any official audit. I drafted a detailed complaint. Not emotional, not dramatic, just clean and clear. Exhibit A through H, high-resolution photos of the fake citation, screenshots of HOA bylaws, statements from two neighbors who'd seen similar enforcement actions that never made it into meeting minutes, and then the bank connection, where the violation payments were being routed through an obscure LLC that just so happened to list Curtis Bell's wife as managing partner. I didn't send it to the HOA. I sent it to the Legal Affairs Division of the State Patrol, flagged under impersonation and unlawful seizure of private property. I knew exactly what desk it would land on, and whose name was on that desk. I'd briefed him on budget proposals just last quarter. Then came the quiet calls. No drama, no shouting, just soft conversations with people in positions that mattered. People I'd worked with for years, who trusted me to only raise a red flag when something truly crossed a line. And this blew past the line. Within 72 hours, I got a discreet update. The HOA enforcers, the two men who'd towed my Camaro in those laughable uniforms, were under formal investigation. Turns out they weren't even contractors. They were neighbors from a few blocks over, hired off the books by Bell himself. The badges, the citations, even the vehicle used for towing, none of it was licensed or documented. Their gear was seized, their statements taken, and legal action was already underway. Then the dominoes really started falling. The HOA board called an emergency meeting, this time with a rep from the state attorney general's office present. Half the members resigned before it even began. Bell was suspended indefinitely pending charges, and that bogus LLC frozen. Its accounts subpoenaed. 2 days later, my Camaro was brought back by an official flatbed under state escort, cleaned, polished, keys in an envelope with a formal, notarized letter of apology signed by what was left of the HOA leadership. No one made a scene. No one needed to. I wasn't after revenge. I was after truth. I hung the apology letter in my garage just above my workbench. Next to it, I framed the original fake citation as a reminder. When someone tries to take what matters from you under the cover of policy, you don't shout. You don't panic. You find the pressure points and push. And there was one more thing I did before I let the whole thing go. At the next community meeting, I stood up, not as a victim, but as a neighbor, and walked everyone through what had happened, how it happened, and how not to let it happen again. I shared copies of the real legal codes, offered to help anyone who'd been targeted, and left them with one simple truth. Bullies don't need power. They just need people too afraid to challenge them. That week, I made sure I wasn't one of them. In the weeks that followed, everything changed. The HOA's charter was officially revoked after an internal audit uncovered multiple policy violations and financial inconsistencies. Bell's so-called leadership crumbled under scrutiny, and the Homeowners Association, once a tool for intimidation, was placed under temporary state oversight. New elections were held. This time, real ones, with transparency, nominations, and ballots that didn't just pass through Curtis Bell's inbox. Neighbors who had never once spoken at a board meeting suddenly stepped forward, inspired by what had happened. People who had kept their heads down started asking questions, reading bylaws, attending open forums. It wasn't just cleanup, it was rebirth. But more than any policy overhaul, something deeper shifted. I printed out copies of the legal documents I used, added simple explanations, and passed them door to door. Not to brag, just so no one else would ever feel as helpless as I did standing in that driveway. I talked to young families, retirees, single parents, people who'd been afraid to speak up or didn't know they had the right. I told them the rules exist to protect you, not to scare you, and that the minute someone starts waving a title around like it's a badge, you ask for paperwork, real paperwork, the kind that can be verified, not just typed up in Word and stamped with a clip art logo. Because that's the thing about injustice. It doesn't need an army. It just needs silence. And silence was one thing I'd given too freely. But not anymore. That week changed me. Not just because I got my Camaro back, not just because Bell's operation was exposed. It changed me because I realized something simple. I'd spent years writing policies that protected people. I never thought I'd need them myself. But when I did, I used every page. I stood in my garage a few nights later, looking at the apology letter in its frame, the car shining under the soft light. I could almost hear my dad's voice from years ago, handing me a wrench and telling me, "Don't ever let anyone tell you what you're worth. You know, that's enough." And I know he would have been proud, not because I fought back, but because I did it the right way.